Welcome to the Lessons from the Woodlot podcast with your host, Tim Radcliffe.
And I'm Mark Luster.
Today's topic is going to be one really good for a lot of hunters. You know, as you followed the first episode, it was really an intro. Today we're going to dive into some of my favorite topics about deer hunting is, you think about your season and you're looking at your cameras and maybe you just don't have the deer that you really want to hunt yet. So what does it take to find the right deer to hunt? And that's what we're going to dive into today. That's our subject matter. And again, Mark has harvested 21 Boone and Crockett deer. I would say that kind of makes him pretty qualified to give us some ideas of where to start in our search for these deer. And Mark, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, and I would like you to just kind of walk us through today, like what's step one? Where do you start?
Well, it's a really good question. Everybody does things a little differently, and I'm not saying that my way is the only way in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying I will speak on what has worked for me. Mm-hmm. Different strokes for different folks. I'm just saying what has worked for me.
Okay, if you're keeping score, it's 21 to 0. Just so we're clear, 21 to 0. Okay. So just, and it's more important, I think, for everybody just to kind of hear that from you of like, how do you track all these deer down? There has to be a method. And by following you for the last year, I know some of your methods. And that's really what we're wanting to dive into is that step one. Where do we start?
Well, step one, and this is good. It's good advice for anybody. I mean, and I'm talking about from the person just looking to knock on a door to get permission. Or if they're looking for a lease, they got to find out amount of money that they got, cornholed for a lease or something, and they're looking for a lease, and maybe they have options, and they're trying to determine which one and whatever. Now, obviously, seeing the buck in person would obviously be, the best case scenario,
right?
But let's just say that you don't have that option. I mean, you can't see back into the woods where these are at, and so on and so forth, or whatever. For me, there is several basic principles that seemingly are the common denominator to where a big deer wants to be. And in my consults, a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients, they might have the farm already. So now all of a sudden we're not looking for the farm, we have the farm, but maybe that farm isn't necessarily checking off all of the boxes for that set of principles that I look for.
Correct.
So then I try to build those principles on that farm. Now that might be a 2 or 3 or 4 day or 4 year process to season that farm if we're starting from scratch. But that being said, think about this, and the analogy I always use is this with all my clients anyway, is let's say you got children at home, and you and the wife, and let's say they're old enough that you guys you can go on vacation, if you will, and the kids stay at home or whatever. Maybe they're old enough for that. I know, at least in my world, the moment me and my wife left, my boy's taken over the master bedroom because it's got a fireplace and it's got a bigger TV and it's cooler in that room or whatever might be the case. Maybe it's comforting to the kid. I don't know, but what I can tell you is, usually being the master bedroom. And I'm parlaying this into the deer world here.
Sure.
But if you create, or the master bedroom is present, when I call it the master bedroom, there's some things that they like. A deer likes, mature buck, they want left alone. Above and there's movies about this. Grumpy old men. I mean, as we get older, we get a little more, our bullshit meter's a little bit off. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So they just don't like dealing with people, other people, for the most part. I'm just saying, some people are socialites, but a lot of your older class men tend to be just perfectly happy as they age to be at home in their core comfortable unit surrounding themselves. Right. So they want prime bedding. And what is prime bedding? Because there's lots of people have different ideas of what that is. Well, prime bedding, you need to think about this, is a deer has lots and lots of prerequisites, the mature one. And in the bedding, they're going to want to eat. They don't want to go to a place, lay down, and not have any nutritional value around them.
Mm-hmm.
You typically are not going to find a deer that beds there, or not one of consequence. And that is a huge mistake that I see a lot of people make. That even have land and have resources and have been misguided in the fact that they think that, say, all switchgrass. It just as an example.
Right.
Typically speaking, we have found that deer just don't like bedding in pure switchgrass. There's no browse in there. At least the reason I believe they don't like doing that is because of the browse situation. But if your timber is all big and mature and there's not much underlying growth, they don't have the cover as far as thickness that they like.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, deer like, especially mature deer, they like, and I don't know how they do it, but they're amazing animals. But they know that when they're bedded there, they live off a more horizontal outline, silhouette, if you will. So you'll find them tend to lay up against a log or lay up against a stump or get up under a cedar tree against that thing or whatever. And it further, there's layers of cover in there. And they tend to like that layering of cover to where you got, new growth, browse, blackberry briars, multiflower rose bushes. I always tell people, if it looks like an overgrown pasture, you probably got a big deer living in it because it provides everything that he needs. He can stay in his bed, stand up, stretch his legs, go pee, do whatever he's got to do, nibble around, satiate that hunger right in his bedroom, lay back down, and be left alone. And I can't express the left alone part enough. Mm-hmm. Now, you say, well, what constitutes something big enough to hold one? Well, honestly, the size of a house in the right area. If you find a little clump of cover, whether it be waterway or 3 or 4 waterways, meaning some timber or some kind of cover out in the middle of nowhere, it could be in a sea of fields. And you might find the biggest deer in the entire area there because he just doesn't deal with predators of multitude different type of predators, if you will. So, and then when you think about that type of property, typically speaking, most hunters will drive right past it. They won't even ask for permission. So a lot of times, when I find things that are ringing my bell, it's because I have seen it ring the mature buck's bell to where he calls that home so many times it's not even funny.
Right.
But a lot of hunters are like, okay, bigger timber, bigger areas of cover, more deer, better deer, whatever. Well, there might be more deer there, and there might be a lot more bucks there. But if you're trying to key in on a buck, a big next level deer, a lot of times getting away from the masses, from the number of hunters, whatever. I try to, if at all possible, get away from neighbors that are right up beside you. You don't have any control of what the neighbors are doing on the property. You can only control your trigger finger, right? That's the only trigger finger you can control, and it isn't your place to tell the neighbor what he shoots or what he doesn't.
Correct.
Therefore, in that situation, if I can find a way of eliminating those neighbors, getting away from the masses of hunters, the likelihood of one of these majestic animals making 5, 6, 7, 8 years old is not only plausible, but it's likely you've got one out there. And I find myself as I mature as a deer hunter, and I'm learning too all the time. I'm this. Oh, yeah. It's a non-stop learning process.
Right.
But I am simply stating that typically speaking, getting away from the masses, if you will, of hunters and that bigger timber areas and all of that has yielded me some very nice deer over the years. And that's one of the main aspects of things. The second thing is nutrition. If you got the good bedding area, but he has to travel a ridiculous distance to get to that food. Now, don't get me wrong, timing of the year, he might be in that spot, and that's something you got to identify too. You might be like, oh man, I found this spot and I got in on this spot, and from October 25th to November 15th, that thing is dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
But before that and after that, you're like, it's just dead, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you found yourself, or it's a rut hole where a particular mature deer likes to shove nose out there to get away from everybody else and whatever. So the farms that you may get on, it might not be that big buck mecca all year. It might be dead to most, but there might be other people that's got permission on there in the past, and they go there in October and they're like, put up a camera and they're like, there's just nothing here. Well,
Right.
if he has to see a standing corn out there, he might be bedding in that standing corn, and that might be where he's going once the crops leave. The whole time you stuck cameras out there, you really didn't get any pictures of him. You're like, okay, well, I guess I tried, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
the reality is, he comes in when all of a sudden his cover starts removing himself, and then removing itself, and then you've got to figure out, okay, so, you know, where is he going to eat? You know, because again, there's 3 basic principles. You know, being left alone, above all.
Yep.
Food, and does. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but being left alone, there's many layers to that. You know, there's the browse and the cover, and you got to
Right.
have those types of things. But where a lot of people tend to want to go to the biggest area of cover that they can, and you end up dealing with all kinds of people around that area
Right.
all the time, because that's where everybody thinks the big deer is. You know, and maybe it could produce those, but the amount of hunting pressure between all of the neighbors as well keeps the age structure maybe down at not what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, you think about something, just a small little piece of cover. Maybe it went. Maybe the hunter that was hunting there left, moved. You know, whatever might be the case, sold the property, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, there could have been a 2-year-old out there. 3 years later, that deer hasn't been touched, hasn't been messed with at all for 3 years. All of a sudden, he's a 5.5-year-old, 160, 70, 80, 90, 200-inch deer, and he's just out there alone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not really being messed with. So I tend to find myself gravitating towards that scenario. Now, I will say that type of hunting is feast or famine, too. You're not going to see 30 deer a day. You might see 1, you might see none, you might see 3. But we're not hunting masses. We're hunting individual.
Right.
And that's where that individual most spends his time once things have played themselves out in the fall here, you know.
Yeah. If you just want to see a bunch of deer, we can put a trail cam on the 40 in Kansas, and they'll see all the deer they ever want to see.
Yeah. Oh,
So
nonstop.
this isn't about how many deer you see. It's
Not about
seeing
how many.
the right deer.
It's about
so
the specific.
as we're drilling down on how you find those
Yeah.
deer, I'm always amazed that year in and year out that you do it. The other thing, a very important thing that you do, I've never, number one, I've never heard of it. Number 2, I've never seen it. And number 3, I absolutely love it. I'm infatuated with the idea that you do it. And that is, Mark will lease ground or gain permission to ground, put 1 camera on it, and let it sit for 3 to 5 years. He has permission. Just because he has permission to hunt there doesn't mean he hunts it every year. But then if he's running out of inventory and he's not seeing what he really wants to see, then you're able to move into some of these properties that you've had permission on for years and go, well, let me see what's over here this year, you know? And then we show up at one of the farms and we're like, oh my God, look at that deer.
I tend to try to put out a few identifying cameras, you know, in specific areas,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on property I've gained permission to or whatever.
Sure.
And then try to gain that inventory of what I'm after. Now, again, you know, summer inventory doesn't necessarily mean that you might be getting pictures of a 230-inch deer all summer. And then about September 1st to October 1st, in there somewhere, you get that fall shift, and he might move a mile.
Mm-hmm.
He might move a half mile. He might move 300 yards, and he might not move at all.
Sure.
Every deer is different.
Yes.
Every scenario is different. You know.
Well, and a
it's
lot
just-
of that is tempting on what they have there. You know, and I think about the fall shift, and you hear the fall shift. But is it really the fall shift, or is it the food shift?
Usually-
Because the food is getting removed in the fall. And you see some of these farms that are laden with deer, but they have no cover. Well, of course, those deer, when when the cover's gone and the crops are harvested, of course they're going to move somewhere. Is that a fall shift?
Well, no, and you're spot on. I think in some instances it is a nutritional shift. In some instances it is truly a home range shift.
Yes.
Some tend to summer somewhere in home range and others. But I see this a lot. Let's say that he summers here, but when that fall shift is over here, let's say that there's two different properties. It's got fields and cover on both of them there. Maybe they're attached, whatever.
Yeah.
If they're on different rotational food sources, depending on the food source that particular deer wants at that particular time, this farm might be better than that farm this year, and this farm better than that farm on this year. If neither leave, standing grain or some type of a food plot, usually the picked corn side tends to be the preferred side because there's a lot more waste grain left.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the bean side left 3 acres of standing beans in there, all bets are off. But that shift tends to take place, and that home range tends to be pretty close. And I see it usually as they age, that core tends to get a lot smaller. And you'll see in 7 and 8 year old deer a lot of times, 40 to 60 acres is kind of 90+% of their time. Their home range might be 600 acres.
Yeah.
But 90+% of that time inside that 600 acres, in that 40 acres is where he calls home.
Yeah.
And that 40 pockets itself over his years.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot to do with food source.
And that is a very interesting, because the Mississippi State Deer Lab, which, again, we're no bullshit. We're not here trying to sell you something. If you go to their website, go to their Facebook page, they got a great YouTube channel. You can go on there and you can actually watch the studies, and they talk about this extensively, that these deer, there's so many of these myths, right? That these deer are doing this or doing that because of this or that. The mature bucks, almost exclusively bedded, very close to the food source, beans, corn, and CRP in the middle. Anywhere we seem to find that combination for a summer is where those deer were moving. The second big part of that was that a lot of days we were watching these deer and they're not moving 20 yards from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night. They have everything they need, right? Yep. So I think some of the times, like we as hunters, we start to panic. We're like, oh my God, my deer's gone, my target. And I know some of your consulting clients, there's one particular guy who's killed 200-inch deer, both of which he's talked to you about before he harvested them. And then he called you because he's got a third deer. And all of a sudden it went dark. And he was like, I know we've done this multiple times, but Mark, help me out here, man. So,
yeah, that was a pretty funny conversation too. He's like, I'm like, I think I remember you calling me on a couple others. He said, yeah. And he's like, both of them are dead. So here's the third call.
Yes. It's like, it's what was the old show?
Yeah,
you can phone a friend.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. You got to experience that phone call too. So
yeah, it was
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But going back to this, and we've seen this, and again, I always say we're always learning.
Yes, sir.
Are always trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I think that is a key takeaway on this too is that a lot of times through the summer, like when you're trying to do summer scouting, or you're trying to look, find your target, or do whatever. Maybe you find him and you're seeing him, and all of a sudden he goes dark on you. He's not coming out to that field you've been setting up on, or got your cameras on or whatever, and everything goes away, and you're like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, lots of people are not familiar with a mature buck outside the rut is emboldened to his stomach 100% of the time, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's packing on as much nutrients and fat and supplies as possible to sustain him through the fall. And as food sources change, it's like the good Lord's inside them. They know what they need instinctually, and they know the plant that gets them what they need.
Right.
Is where I'm going with this. And lots of times, July and August every year, they disappear for the most part, and sometimes from those fields, or there will be a period of time Well, we got to doing some research into the CRP. Well, a lot of your CRP has bird's foot trefoil as well as Lespedeza in it. Both of them pretty darn high in protein. Both of them are really strong in hot, dry summer time frames, whatever. And we have been watching a ton of our big deer that disappeared from our bean fields. We found them in the CRP, and they don't leave the CRP. They stand up. We literally watch them stand up out of their bed, and then they feed in that CRP. And then, they may hit that field after dark way, but they are in no hurry to go nowhere at no time. So I think when people have found that deer or are looking for that deer, and this is the time frame at which they're looking for them, they disappear, and people are like, where are these deer at? Well,
Right.
they're probably in the CRP right under your nose. So, but again, that's the timing of the year, and each year with different rains and so on and so forth, it plays a little different role in the timing, probably shifting 4, 5, 6 days here or there. But there's a distinct time frame that we are actually in as we speak, or has been.
Yes.
Well, as a matter of fact, we were looking over a CRP patch the other day, and I think there was 35 or 6 deer in the CRP, with 2 deer being in a bean food plot that was completely hidden. We could set up on the hill and look at that whole thing, and you could just see deer everywhere in the CRP, and not but 2 in the food plot. And you're like, buddy, there's no stronger of a... I mean, the deer are telling you what they're doing.
Yes.
And it ain't a deer. It was mature deer. There was a couple mature deer in there.
Absolutely.
But there was does, fawns, and everything in between in that,
Yes.
which is to say that you got to get yourself out of the mindset when you're looking for something that, hey, well, he's going to be in the beans, or he's going to be in the corn, or he's going to be in the alfalfa field or the clover field. Well, that, depending on the timing, depending on what time of the year it is, depending on the food source that they happen to be on,
Right.
they tend to disappear on you, and you're like, well, what in the world happened? Well, they're under your nose. They just might not be going very far.
Right.
So when you're looking for a deer that you're looking for to try to harvest in this time of year, meaning about, well, later July through most of August, we'll call it.
Yeah.
That time frame, your buck might stand up in the edge of the cornfield because you're using the corn for shade. It's out of bugs. It's away from, so I think they get out of some of the bug, dealings that they have, as well as biting insects and stuff. They get out there, they bed in that corn. Plus, they don't even practically have to stand up, and they got food right there. They got all the corn, and they get a ton of moisture out of that corn.
Yes.
Then they can go to the thing, and we've just been watching them eat in that CRP, and they're plucking Lespedeza and bird's foot trefoil out of all of the mare's tail and foxtail and everything else that's out there. But they are specifically just pulling up yellow flowered stuff, and we know exactly what it is, and it's an invaluable lesson, to know. I mean, hey, your deer might not have moved. He's right there. He's just not moving very far for a couple 3 weeks.
Right.
So
Right.
don't push the panic button.
Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, clearly that guy he wasn't panicked. He was concerned.
He was expressing some
concerned.
concern. I'm like, don't hit the panic button yet. Like
A little bit of hand holding, and
but
I think he
he's
walked him off the edge.
he's a good hunter, and he's like, if he's after it, pretty good chance.
It's a good deer.
Pretty good chance he's gonna get it. And you heard me. I mean, that's a guy that calls me out of the blue, and he's a guy from Ohio.
Yeah.
Well, matter of fact, I've been seeing a bunch of EHD stuff here lately about Ohio. I pray to good Lord that doesn't happen to any of you guys, but it's a something that is the dark side of the deer world that we're dealing with these days a lot. So hopefully he doesn't deal with that and he gets a chance to take it.
Yeah. And one of the other observations that we made, when we talk about finding, how are we going to find the right deer that we want to hunt? Something that excites us, and we wake up every day wondering if we got them on camera. Like that excitement. I mean, it's the best TV in our life, right?
Oh yeah.
But what we have found this summer also has been any mechanically sprayed soybeans are getting decimated compared to drone sprayed soybeans or helicopter/aircraft. And what we mean for the viewers and the listeners is when they run that big sprayer through those bean fields, it creates highways that the deer are using religiously. If there are two bean fields beside each other, one mechanically sprayed with wheel tracks, one without it, all of the bucks that we have observed and the mature deer are bedded, laying in it, in the tracks, walking in the tracks, using the tracks, bedded on the edge. They can walk to the tracks quickly. And this year, especially with as much rain as we've had in Iowa, we got beans that are 6 feet tall.
It feels like it, doesn't it? I mean, they're chest high,
And when the deer does spook, and we're taking photographs of them, and they do spook, like watching them run through it is painful to watch. So it instantly made sense to us why
tracks.
that was where they wanted to be. So again, if you haven't found the deer that you're looking for, Mark subscribes to find a temperature variant in the Midwest around where you hunt, Ohio, wherever it may be, Kentucky. When you get that first temperature break in July, hit a bean field. Yeah. But if you know where the bean fields are close to your farms, it's probably where the big mature bucks are going to be, right?
So and then we've been seeing them, like you said, in those tracks, and then they bed in them. Like we'd be setting up over a field, and there's not a deer around, and all of a sudden, boop, here comes a head, and boop, here comes a head, and they're standing up in those tire tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So they're literally bedded in the field, and when they lay down, the beans are tall enough, you can't even see the racks above the beans now.
Correct.
When they're standing up, heck, their necks are half covered. It's crazy. I mean, so they will hide and intentionally hide right in plain sight. And he's in his bed, and right now, this time of year, with so much, we've had a lot of moisture this year.
Mm-hmm.
So water is not really a huge draw right now. They're getting moisture in a lot of their food, as well as there's available water everywhere. So that's, I don't think that's playing a huge role, or at least in our area of the world.
Right.
I mean, in a more arid climate, I'm sure it does. But all that being said, it's another little piece of the puzzle when you're trying to find that deer that you're after, where they might be bedding. And right now, it's in the most inconspicuous spots you can think of.
Sure.
Where we're tending to find the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually watching Jack's video the other day.
Yeah.
Jack
Houston.
Houston. He did a drone survey for us. Great kid. Gonna be a killing machine. I think he's getting a invaluable amount of information off of what he does. But all that being said, he's been finding some big deer for clients here lately, and we got to talking, and the common denominator is a lot, especially like terraces or little grass strips through the fields. Typically, that's where he's finding them bedding in all of those. Just in out in the middle of nowhere. So, pretty interesting piece of information.
Yeah. And Jack, when he came out and did the deer survey, I'll be honest, one of our really special farms sits on 30 acres, but it adjoins a 154-acre wildlife preserve.
Yeah.
That 154-acre wildlife preserve, if you would have asked me, I would have guessed there were 60 deer living in there. There were 21. So It wasn't as much as we thought was on that farm, but even with a herd of 21 deer, that farm every year is producing just incredible genetic deer.
Right.
It is one of our favorite farms.
To prove that point, though, too. I mean, and this is the, we're year 3, I guess, in the management part of that. We had 11 bucks, 10 does.
Yeah.
I mean, just exactly where you want it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, I don't know. It was.
Yeah.
It was worth it. And I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, but if you ever want to know exactly what you got going on, give Jack a call, because that kid will show you every deer you got on your farm.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to watch him work.
Gives you a good baseline too, and I know we talk about this. So we've talked about Mark Hart. He will harbor leases and permission pieces that he doesn't even hunt on. So the number one thing is keeping that intrusion off of there,
Yeah.
But again, I was a farmer. We farmed cattle, and there was the one thing we didn't really talk about in the intro was that we had this cattle operation, and people would ask me, well, why do you want to farm cattle? And I was like, to be a better deer hunter. Because I felt like if you couldn't talk to a farmer, then the farmers have more of the ground in the United States than anyone in public game lands or anything. I mean, the farmers have it.
Yeah.
Where you want to hunt is probably owned by a farmer or a family that owns a lot of land, okay? How do you talk to those people? Like, we owned our farm in Maryland for 10 years, and no one ever came to my farm and asked to hunt whitetails on my farm unless they were a farm hand. Now, there was a guy who was dying to kill turkey. But then that was one of the things that Jake said, you know, our producer, Jake's like, you know, I run a grain cart for a farmer. You know, if you're the farmer, like, that's real help.
Yes.
That's not, I'll come out and mow some grass. I mean, that's real help. So, you know, you can gain different levels of permission pieces by actually putting forth a little sweat equity as well. So again, when you're thinking about how to find the buck that you want to hunt, if you've got one choice, I mean, that's your choice. But if you start working at it systematically and gain some permission, you know, what your budget can afford, if you can afford a small lease somewhere, you know, I'm telling you guys, we're hunting the biggest deer that we have on our farms right now is on 74-acre piece.
Yeah.
The second largest deer we have is on 86 acres. The third largest is on 30. The fourth and the fifth largest are on 52 acres. So we're not talking about big pieces of ground to hold these deer.
Nope.
So I almost think, like, when people are trying to find a deer to hunt, they're looking for a big farm where they can gain permission instead of looking for that waterway with 5 acres of CRP that you've been known for. And I can't express enough, coming from Florida and never having the time to enjoy. Like, I love July's.
It's like a new season. It's like a whole nother season.
It's a whole nother
that you get to enjoy, you know.
Yes.
And it's awesome. It's actually some of my favorite times of the year.
Right.
You know.
Right. But it's the same as college. If you apply to one college, you have one chance to go to school.
Yeah.
If you apply to 15 colleges, we have 15 chances. So if you broaden your perspective of what you're looking for, I think they can help themselves by having multiple places to go. And it may be public sprinkled in there. I got a 5-acre permission piece over here. I got 20 acres over here. I mean, I can tell you, I just don't think a lot of people knock on people's doors that own 25 acres.
Well, no, you're 100% right. I mean, one of the biggest deer I ever killed was, and this was, you know, back in the day, how I did things. I would, you know, this time of year, that July, August, just be cruising side roads with binoculars, looking for a hint of what I wanted to go after. Mm-hmm. And then when I found them, I'd find all the landowners there. I would go knock on the door. And again, I was, you know, one thing I think really helped me there is I was in the corrections side of things. So
sure.
I would intentionally go right before I got, you know, depending on the time. A lot of times I work 3 to 11. So it would be right before I went to work. I'd get ready. I'd get my uniform. You know, typically what I found is being a man of a badge tended to soften the I don't know you, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You know, typically if they give you permission, a person that's wearing a badge, you know, they know that you're not somebody that's going to do something nefarious on their property.
Correct.
You know, so without me having to say that, I would just be in it, you know. And don't get me wrong, use what you got. I mean, right. Every man that ever tried to hit on that 10 or 11 that was over there at the corner of the bar, he used whatever he could to make a correlation with her, to make it, you know, make her laugh, make her, whatever might be the case. You used what you had.
Yeah.
For me, you know, I was a person that worked in corrections. So, you know, I wore a badge for work. My point with that is I found that it tended to soften the initial introduction, if you will. So,
sure.
And then when you're asking on properties that are just out of the way, out of middle of nowhere, typically I would get that, man, there ain't really anything out there to hunt. I know, but there's one tree and I really like it. Right. I would like to be in that tree.
Right.
You know,
right.
And that's what I would do. And then again, in that manner, I will say, if you do it and you get successful at doing that, trust me when I tell you you'll have haters. I mean, and what I mean by that is people that had pictures of that deer. That's my deer. You know, he might have 4 years of pictures of it, but you just happened to put the puzzle pieces together in 1 year before he did those 4. You whacked him, and now all of a sudden, you know, you're unliked, and then you're not the neighbor,
right.
And then the neighbor goes and talks to the person, and then next thing you know, you don't have to farm to hunt next year.
Correct.
So you just shake their hand and say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and you know, I was able to harvest really great deer, and I'm back on the look for another
right.
target.
Yeah,
it's
just next.
So and that's how my hunting career went for the most part.
Yeah. All right. So as we've been talking about this, we're really trying to concentrate on how do we find a big deer. I think there's some theory that you have regarding people's hunting spots, and I see you laughing, so I know you know where I'm going with this before I even have to say it.
Yeah, there's a roving joke that I have.
Yes.
You know, when somebody asks me, how you find a place where a big deer is? I'm like, take off driving through the country, and when your cell phone stops and you don't have signal, look around. There's a big deer.
Yes.
Because typically speaking, you know, the cell phone towers and cell phone people, they tend to congregate those towers where there is money, if you will, where there's clients.
Mm-hmm.
But when clients get sparse, they decide, hey, well, I'm not going to put one here. It's not worth it. There's not enough people living here for us to get, you know, put the investment in.
Right.
My point with that is if you're getting into an area that tends to not have, you know, enough people for the investment, tends to be more property that is less hunted.
Yeah.
It's just a general rule of thumb that I've went off with. It was a roving joke for years, but the reality is it keeps playing out in that manner.
Yeah.
You know, which sucks when you're doing cell cameras or cell service cameras, especially the kind that only link to one kind. You know, let's say
One
it's
carrier.
AT&T or Verizon or whatever, and you have to choose which one it is. Well, if that isn't the one that there's the cell tower close, you're screwed. You know, so I'm not pushing anybody's product. I just what I have found that works best is I use Blackgate cameras. It's cameras I use. It's cameras we use.
Yep.
Because they're not specific to any tower. They will grab the closest tower.
Correct.
You know, functionality. That's all I care about. I don't care. You don't have to give me all the bells and whistles, and you don't have to give me a $700 camera. But you do, or what I want, is to find a camera that works well with a decent price point.
Sure.
You know, so on and so forth. But works well is number one. So we find that we miss far fewer pictures with those, and we've done our tests, and we've done you know the rabbit holes I go down.
Oh yeah.
But we know for a fact that for us, of ones that we've tried, by far they're not even, there's not even really a close second. You know?
Yeah, I'd like to have Ryan on too, really kind of talking about that with the camera lenses and the different things that he uses and stuff, because it's you know, again, it's all part of the strategy, right? So if you can't make out what the deer is, how do you know if you want to hunt that deer or not?
It's a great point, and that's one of the things I'm, you know, for the consumer, for the listener, who's trying to get through all the fauna, get through all that white noise, all these people, all these ads, all of these, you know, TV personalities trying to tell you that you need to try this camera because it's great and it's the best thing in the world and whatever. And the reality is that company's paying them thousands of dollars a year to say it.
Correct.
You know, and that is, are you truly getting their honest opinion?
Correct.
Looking at that camera lens.
Yeah.
You know, when they're being paid by that company to say that, to use that. I don't think so. I think, unfortunately, the way that the world is right now, you know, it's all a money grab, and it's not honesty.
Yes.
My honest opinion is that camera and that camera company is by far the best one.
One of my good friends, Chris, there's no way he would ever ask for permission to hunt on a farm where there's no cell phone signal, because he wants to play Candy Crush the whole time he's in this blind, right?
I'm guilty of that a few times, I'm going to be honest.
So yeah, I put my buddy Chris on a farm in Ohio, and it had this crazy big buck, and I mean, he took the best picture of him, and once the deer was 60 yards away from him. But when it walked right in front of him, he was too busy engaged in Candy Crush, so he misses the deer at 7 yards. So, you know, in all joking aside, and sorry, Chris, that was too good of a story not to share. But you know, again, a lot of people aren't looking for those tactics to go to those places. Another thing that layered on, and it really I got from Jesse Stay, was driving in the truck. Yeah. And you're driving down a dirt road, gravel road. We're down these gravel roads a lot. I mean, one of the common things of Mark looking for deer is Mark's physically in a truck most of the month of June and July looking for a deer in a bean field. Yeah. You know, depending on the weather and circumstances. But Jesse showed us how you can add your Onyx and overlay it on your screen. And we both drive GMC trucks, and on our GMCs you can have Onyx right up on the screen, and you can see the ownership of the parcels that you're looking at. So while you're in the truck and you have your binoculars up and you're seeing a deer, you can look at the screen and see exactly who owns that farm, how big it is. You know,
if you're driving down the road and you by chance a big one. Cross the road in front of you, whatever. Click on that on your thing. It's on your screen. Drop a pin right on your screen. Save. Bam. You know exactly where it was at. Right. You know who the landowner is. You know. You get the aerial view. I mean, it just there's just little bitty things, you know, that make it nicer. But I mean, it could be done with a plat book. You know. I mean, same way. You know, with plat book and an ink pen. You know, I used to do it all the time.
Right.
Onyx hasn't been around forever, you know.
Exactly.
So you know, that's another thing, and then going on with the, you know, we're in finding and locating a buck. You know, lots of people, they tend to push pretty far into cover with their cameras and all that stuff. That, I mean, you've seen. I never do that. I will never risk my hunting for the sake of a scout, if that makes any sense.
Right.
I am not willing to blow that deer up trying to see him or get him or whatever. So I'm not going to push into an area where he's calling home, like where he's bedded and where he feels really comfortable, and he says, this is the master bedroom I want to be in. I'm not pushing into that at all. There's no humanly reason to go do that, you know, for the sake of a picture. Correct. All you get it out on the edges where you can get to it and from it easily if maintenance is needed. You know, I don't need to know especially in the summer, because a shift can take place. But he might not shift off the farm at all, but his movements, his daily movements, will most certainly shift from summer into the fall time. So just because you are hot to trot on him in the middle of the summer does not mean that's the way it's going to be later on. Now, again, they're emboldened to their stomach until they're not. And that being said, you have to be cognizant of the time of the year, food shifts. As an example, I walked outside this morning and tunk, guess what hit the top of my truck? An acorn. And I'm like, all right. So I got to looking around on the ground. Some of the acorns starting to fall out of the oak trees. And I'm like, okay, well, you already know that's going to be something they hammer onto. It's like a birthday kid eating his chocolate cake and you can't shut him off of it, you know. It's his birthday. He can eat as much of it as he wants to. He will engorge himself on that stuff. So as food source changes, he's going to do that. So if in the early season, if you're finding him, that's great. We're keeping notes. But as the season progresses, as it gets closer to season, whatever, you need to be cognizant of that potential shift. And that shift could be because of many reasons. It could be of another buck that is more dominant and doesn't like him in the area, or, you know, it could be food sources, or it could be his own personal likes for areas. Because, and this is another thing, and it'll be another podcast, but we found also that they have like these almost like, you know, I watched a YouTube video, and I'm going to use his words. So, because I like the way he phrased it. But it's like a thermal hub, you know, and they tend to like to get on the edge of those fingertips, those ridge points, so they have like a bird's eye view. They can sit there and lay and look out of what they can't smell while they're laying there, the wind in the back of the head. They can smell everything behind them that they can't see, and they can see everything in front of them because they're up, have a bird's eye view of all that. You simply cannot get in on them. That's why I don't get in on their bedding area very much at all.
Right.
You know, it's my old thing is this. It's an analogy I use all the time with clients, but I say this. You know, if you came home today and somebody was sitting on your couch, would you know it? Well, of course you would. It's your home, it's your couch. You could practically walk around it with your eyes closed. Don't think for a second you're going to go into that dude's bedroom or his living room and sit on his couch and him not know it. You're not punching in there like that without him knowing. Now, I don't care if he wasn't there for 2 days. When he comes back in, he's going to cut your track because you had to punch into there, and he's going to know what you're doing. He will learn you faster than you will ever learn him.
Right.
You have to be a ghost to him. Now, don't get me wrong. There's always exceptions to every rule, you know. But
right. If the neighbor's feeding the deer potato chips,
right.
You're probably going to get away with pushing in there because it's used to human scent.
He's accustomed to human scent and
Correct.
so on and so forth. You know, like a lot of your urban, your urban hunters, or whatever.
Right.
Those deer don't react to human scent or intrusion near, like, say, central Kansas,
right.
where they're not usually used to dealing with people up in their core,
mm-hmm.
or even Iowa or Illinois or whatever. Yeah. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying that a non-urban deer that's not really, numbed to human intrusion, he's going to react in the most adverse way possible to you, to your activities. Yeah. So you just have to be smart. Don't scout your way out of a deer.
Correct.
Is where I'm headed with this. You see him, visualize him, see where he's at, and then if you're in a state that during the summer you can put out something or whatever to put him in front of the camera, by all means. Yeah. If you're not, like say you're in I think Iowa or Illinois is nothing at all year round. I think it's kind of went back and forth, through the CWD time frame, but I think it's nothing at all times right now. But obviously you can't do that there. So if it's something I'm in control of, a lot of times we'll plant us a fruit tree or something that more localizes them into a specific spot. You can get your inventory, if you will, without having to punch into his core and actually disturb him and move him from what you got to see before you went and did all that.
Right.
Essentially.
I have seen you buy a truckload of apples to keep from going into a woodlot to bring him to where you wanted. You had safe access in and out.
The reason
it worked.
In Iowa, you can't all season long, whatever, put stuff out, but you can't hunt anywhere near it, all that kind of stuff. But we don't do none of that. Our feeders and whatever, they all get scooped up and they're gone long before season. But I love apples. Apples for them are like crack cocaine. I mean, they just love them. And when you're giving them something that they can't get anywhere else, you tend to get them right in front of the camera. So, and the reason we like using a corn product or a apple or something like that is when they eat it and it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing leaching. There's nothing going into the soil. There's nothing that a DNR agent can try to use against you. They can make false claims. I've seen it. But other than that, the moral of the story is that when it's ate, it's gone.
It's not residual.
It's not residual. It's not a leaching thing. So when that happens and it's gone, then you don't have to worry about anything because it's eaten and it's gone. So that's why we like to use that stuff more so than anything else.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I'm gonna say this for my guys that have hunted in West Virginia. Deer in different states act differently, and when you brought up the Kansas deer, how they would allow intrusion, like for all the guys in West Virginia that hunt there, I've hunted there for years, and every deer you see, they look straight up in the tree.
Yeah, the old adage of a deer don't look up is a lie. That's a myth. Right. That's one of those deer myths.
Oh, they look up all the time.
They look up all the time.
But when we went to Kansas, they were like, I don't know, it was a lack of trees or hunters in the trees. It just didn't seem like those deer were just always looking up in a tree. So it's amazing as we travel across this the United States and we hunt these animals, how they will adapt to certain environments, which I think is what makes it susceptible for the web sleuths to come out of their mom's basement and be like, I saw on the third Thursday of last month that this deer walked into the wind. Well, look, I mean, if there was a tractor on one side that didn't pose any risk to him and 16 four-wheelers on a trail ride, yeah, I mean, he's going to do whatever the hell he has to do to get away from those trail riders. So, yeah, you might observe a deer going south into, going downwind because he's in fear of his life. His entire job is to save his life every day.
Yeah.
To your adage of you only have to be right once, he has to be right every single day. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the key here. So when people are honing in on those areas, you really don't want to leave scent, even in the early season, as much as you do during the hunting season. So I like that. So some key takeaways from today's, episode is really trying to find that deer, how to find your target deer. So one, having multiple farms, multiple options, it is to your advantage.
To your advantage.
It's going to reduce the impact that you have. If you have 4 farms to hunt, then you have 4 times less pressure on one individual farm unless you just choose to go to that farm every day. But again, it's now empowering you to make that decision. So if you're out in your area, core area, trying to find farms, we don't like to have our farms, bought within 2 of the same herds. We like our farms to be at least 5-6 miles away.
Something completely different.
So we're sampling a different herd, right?
Diversifying the portfolio.
Diversify the portfolio, right? We want to ride back roads. We want to ride around agriculture if we can find it. Now, again, I hunted for many years in West Virginia. There just wasn't that much agriculture. So what we would do is know where all the white oaks were. And deer prefer the white oak over the red oak, at least in West Virginia where I hunted.
Same here.
They want those white oaks, so we would go and put cameras around those white oaks in June before they ever started dropping, and then you could set the camera on, the activity level. We'd ramp that thing all the way to the roof, so that way it basically had to be a truck driving in front of it to make it go off.
Right.
So you're conserving your battery. And then when the deer start disappearing, or you walk out to your truck and you hear that pink, you're like, okay, they're starting to drop. Now you go back in there, change that sensitivity, make the camera back to normal, and now you're getting your pictures. Never did video, trying to conserve battery, to leave that there as long as you could. So that was a way to kind of get some inventory in there. Well, and these are just woodlots. There's no ag within 50 miles of them. So every scenario is different. But that being said, I think your takeaways on drive to you don't have cell phone service, right? So anybody that wants to play Candy Crush in the stand, they're not going to ask those people for permission. I would start with smaller parcels. I think it's a common thing. If you see a parcel and it's named, the 200 Club, I probably wouldn't ask them for permission.
You're probably getting a no.
You're probably getting a no there, right?
Just
or
a guess.
It's like Deer Slayer Society. Well, yeah, you're probably not getting in there, But if you just see it's like Jim and Mary Ann Smith, and you look at that farm and you're looking at the house and you're like, man, they have probably been there a very long time, and those people, farmers particularly, I've never seen them say no to help from someone that's genuine wanting to help them, with the farm. There's always something to do on a farm. So man, maybe don't have a lot of money, but you can put in a little sweat equity, and now you have a second farm to hunt, or a third, or a fourth.
Most of the time, in your old school farmers, landowners, coming and helping, putting up fence or running a grain cart or anything like that. Somebody offering that kind of help, that's more than money to a lot of your old farmers.
Yeah.
But money is money. But genuine, true, quality people that you're allowing on your farm that also look out for you and help. I mean, there's many a times that there's a particular landowner I'm thinking of that his cows, they should have been steaks. Let's put it like that, because you couldn't keep them in.
Yeah.
I spent half of my time putting his cows in, But and I don't call him and say, hey, your cows. I would fix fence. If I found the hole, I would try to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bother him with it. Get it back in, fix it. He's seen it. I didn't know he's seen it. I wasn't trying to bring it up. I'm just trying to help him out.
Amen.
I think he would do the same for me in that kind of a scenario. I'm trying to do the same for him. you know, whatever. Well, hey, if I don't get to hunt this afternoon because he had 20 cows out in his field, or you know, whatever might be the case.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Oh, no big deal. Let's get it
Yeah.
back in and let's do it. Those types of things mean way more than
Yeah.
than you know. Matter of fact, is one example here, real quick. We just had one of the landowners happen to pass away, unfortunately, and his nephew's not from anywhere around here, hours away. And I'm like, listen, you know, he was really good to me, so on and so forth. I know you're not close. I'll mow the yard. I'll keep the yard up. I'll do anything you guys need me to do. If you need me to run to anywhere, call me. Do not hesitate. I don't know that guy from Adam,
Right.
but his uncle was awesome to me.
Yeah.
I mean, so that kind of thing is more empowering for you as a person who is getting permission than monetary most of the time with your old school farmers. You know,
I mean, it's
integrity means a lot.
Absolutely. And hay season comes around, June and July. It's hotter than hell, and there's hay to be made, and it's been raining for weeks. And you know, like, just use some common sense. If you see a guy cutting hay, you can pretty much guarantee in the next 2 to 3 days, if he's not wet wrapping it, there's going to be a lot of hot work, because it's normally they wait till it's hot and it's super sunny. But who wants to do that? No one. Well, give yourself an edge. You know, none of us have ever went to buy a car, right, and had a car salesman tell us, hey, this car has 4 round tires. All cars, like, why would you tell me that? So stop trying to be like everyone else and be yourself. Use your individualism, your diversity. Hey, you may not know how to make hay, but you know what? You could probably pick hay up and throw it in a hay wagon. If they're making small square bales, man, that's perfect. If they're horse people, small squares are perfect. It's what they want. If they're cattle, they're going to probably make 4x5s, and the farmer would say, man, if you could just run this tractor, it'd make it twice as quick to get the bales out of the field before the rain comes. Like, those little things actually mean something to the farmer and their bottom line versus your time. And I hear people all the time say there's nowhere to hunt, yet in 10 years of having a cattle farm in Western Maryland, not one person ever rolled up to my door and said, hey, can I hunt whitetail deer on your farm and let me help you? Not one person. They never did it. So the fact is, be different and you know, try to diversify your own portfolio through rentals, permission pieces, lease, whatever you can do. Find a way, and that really has been, watching Mark, the key to his success of consistently every year in, year out finding big deer. So,
yeah.
Anything you'd like to add to that before we wrap her up?
I mean, we have a farm to give away.
Yep.
I don't know if this is the
That's
time
always
to do
our
it.
wrap up. Yep.
But there's a farm that we have bought. We've touched on it on the first episode, and we are working towards getting that thing completely ready. We're going to give it away. All you got to do is smash that subscribe, smash that like button. You're in. We're not asking for $1 from you, and we're going to give it away. Now, there are other ways to get your name in it more often.
Yep.
You know, and we do have a swag store, and anything purchased, your name goes in the hat again, as well as interactions. And there's going to be other giveaways as well.
Sure.
Things that we're going to do, you know, because at the end of the day, this thing here, our vision for this isn't to be an infomercial. We want to be able to bring you the reality of the way the hunting should be, in my opinion. So,
Amen.
We're pretty excited about giving that to somebody, and it truly will be turnkey when it's done. So I'm pretty excited about it.
And we did have the question from, it was actually one of my buddies. He was like, hey, listen, I have a company. I want to buy some of your swag for my employees. If I buy 30 employees, 30 sweaters, do I get 30 entries to win? And I said, yes. Like, you know, each item that you buy in the swag store does give you another one. So, you know, again, if you happen to be that guy that wins that, you always have the right to give it back to us to give that donation away, and then we're going to do some really special stuff with you out here in Iowa. So we look forward to giving that farm away. There's going to be video. We're going to be out there working on it. We've got beans planted on it now for the plot. It's all fenced off. The fall plot's plowed, put on it now. So we're going to monitor this farm through the season, and then next year before season, this farm's going to be cherry, ready to go. all the stands, box, everything's in place, and it's just you walk up and you hunt and you get a smile from ear to ear. So
And there's two reasons why we're doing it next year to wrap this up. The reason we're doing it in 26, it's kind of twofold. One, I like to season the farm. I mean, and what I mean by that, it's one thing to get it ready, but then there's another thing to let that farm season. Let them figure out, hey, food's going to be here. Hey, this is where we did block and tackle. This is where I get in and out of here. This is what I do. You know, I've got accustomed to this blind being here. I've got, everything in place where all of the I's are dotted, all of the T's are crossed, and we've left no stone left unturned, so to speak. And usually that takes a couple years, to get that completely played out. The secondary part is with this not getting started till roughly September of 2025. It's too short of a period. We'd like to get some legs up under us, if you will, and build this up through the course of a year. So that's why, fall or winter of 2026, it's being given away.
Yeah. And you guys, you can like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. The more you interact, the more chances you get to win the farm. We will be bringing sponsors on. I think that's important. We talk about that we're not paid for by sponsors, but our sponsor money we want to go to farms for you guys. We're not trying to do this to enrich ourselves. We're trying to do this for you guys, so that way, hey, there's we had one of the sponsors we were talking to, and they asked if we'd give away 4 farms in a year. And we're like, listen, man, I'll give away 30.
If you
you just bring the Brinks truck, and we'll go buy some awesome farms, get them set up turnkey for people, so they're all ready to hunt and go in there. But we look forward to watching this evolve, and we're really excited, to see who wins next year. And we look forward to making this the best hunting season of your life. Stick with us next week. We have so much stuff to cover. Next week we're going to dive in, and it's going to be another. We're on this focus of finding these deer, and we have some strategies for you next week. We're excited to talk to you about. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Winafarm.com. Get going.